So, picture this scenario for a second. You are standing right in the middle of a grocery store.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Right. You're holding like a box of cereal, completely lost in thought about whether you have enough milk at home.
Hmm.
And suddenly, the child you are with, maybe your own kid, maybe a niece or a nephew, just tugs really hard on your sleeve.
The dreaded sleeve tug.
Exactly. And they point a finger straight at a family walking by. Or, maybe they just look up at you. And at the absolute top of their lungs, they ask this massive, deeply existential question.
Yep.
Something like, why does their family look different from ours? Or maybe even a heavier variation, like, why am I different from everyone else?
It is, it's just the ultimate record scratch moment. I mean, the ambient noise of the store just totally fades away and time seems to stop entirely in aisle 4.
You feel that physical reaction almost instantly. Like your heart rate spikes, you get that cold sweat.
Oh, totally.
Because you feel this immense, crushing pressure to deliver a perfectly worded, sociologically accurate, and psychologically flawless answer right there between the Cheerios and the oatmeal. And you are just hyper-aware of anyone who might be listening.
It's terrifying. But today, we are going right into the heart of those exact moments.
We really are. Our source material for this deep dive is this fascinating guide from a series called My Child's Neverending Questions.
It's such a great resource.
It really is. It operates as a roadmap for how to answer questions about family diversity, uniqueness, and belonging. And it breaks it down for children at 3 very distinct developmental stages, so ages 3, 6, and 9.
And while it sounds like a pretty straightforward parenting manual on the surface, reading through it reveals something much deeper. I mean, it is actually a masterclass in human psychology.
Yeah, that's what struck me too.
The text is really an exploration of how we construct our sense of identity from the ground up and how our brains, process social categorizations as we age.
And that is our mission for you today. Because whether you are a parent, an educator, an aunt, or literally just someone who interacts with other human beings in society, how we explain differences to kids is huge.
It really holds a mirror up to our own stuff.
Exactly. It reflects our own deepest, most complicated desires for acceptance. So the source material hits us with a huge paradigm shift right out of the gate.
It does. It argues that when a child asks about why someone's skin is different, or why a classmate has 2 moms, or why they themselves feel out of place, they aren't actually asking for a lecture on biology or sociology.
Right, they're asking a completely hidden question.
Yes, the text points out that behind these loud, observational questions is a quiet and honestly sometimes anxious hope. They're secretly asking a question about their own belonging.
Like, do I fit?
Exactly. Am I okay just as I am? Will you still love me if I turn out to be different?
I found that framing so incredibly helpful. It makes me think of troubleshooting a computer bug.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. You get an error message flashing on your screen. And the question the child asks out loud, like, why does that family look like that? That's just the error message popping up on the monitor.
Yeah, it's just the surface level symptom.
Exactly. But the underlying code that actually needs to be addressed, the root of the glitch, is their fundamental human need for safety and belonging.
Which means you can't just stare at the error message and read it back to the computer.
No. You have to fix the underlying code.
And that framing completely transforms the adult's role in that grocery store moment.
Yeah.
If you believe the child is asking for an encyclopedia entry on human diversity, your stress response makes perfect sense.
Because nobody wants to get that wrong.
Right. You worry about saying the wrong thing, using outdated terminology, or just exposing your own ignorance to whoever is standing nearby.
But if you realize that the real question being asked is, am I safe in a world where people are different? Your entire objective shifts.
The pressure to be a walking dictionary just totally vanishes.
It's such a relief.
It really is. Your goal moves from providing comprehensive data to simply providing a calm, loving presence. You are attempting to remove the fear from the concept of being different.
Because the text emphasizes that this initial conversation is really just an opportunity to demonstrate that variation in the human experience isn't a threat.
Yes, but to understand how this actually plays out in reality, we have to look at how a child's brain processes information at different stages of life, beginning with the toddler years.
Okay, let's get into that. The guide characterizes age 3 as the stage of simple categories.
Right.
And the advice here is to keep the response incredibly brief and reassuring. The specific phrase they suggest adopting is, every family is its own special team.
And that phrasing is highly intentional. Special team is a concrete, tangible concept that a toddler can grasp.
Because at 3 years old, Their cognitive development is heavily focused on sorting the world into distinct, manageable buckets.
Right. Exactly. A toddler is just learning object permanence and basic categorization, like this is a dog, this is a cat. This person has hair like mine, this person does not.
So they possess zero capacity for abstract social theory.
Literally none.
Which is why the source advises that at age 3, you should simply acknowledge the basic observable difference they pointed out. Skin color, hair, eyes, the type of home someone lives in.
You just acknowledge it neutrally.
Right. And then you immediately pivot to reassurance. You say something like, we all look a little different, and that's part of what makes the world beautiful. You are exactly you, and there is no one else just like you.
The beauty of that approach is its perfect alignment with their neurological limits. You validate their observations so they learn to trust their own eyes, and then you reinforce their security.
I have to admit, reading this section, I felt a bit called out.
Oh, really? How so?
I think as adults, we're incredibly guilty of projecting our own anxieties onto toddlers. A 3-year-old asks why their friend has a different type of hair, and the adult suddenly feels this intense need to deliver like a 20-minute monologue about genetics and global history.
Yes. Just to prove to the universe that they are raising a good progressive citizen.
Meanwhile, the kid just wants a hug and a 5-second answer so they can go back to playing with a truck.
It's so true. We over-explain because we are so anxious about getting it wrong.
And the text explicitly warns against this tendency, doesn't it?
It does. It states clearly that the goal at age 3 is not to explain every kind of family or every kind of identity. Doing so just results in immediate cognitive overload for a toddler.
So the objective is purely to establish 2 foundational ideas.
Right. First, that differences exist and are entirely normal, and second, that the child is safe and loved.
Because if an adult delivers a tense 20-minute lecture, the child doesn't absorb the historical context anyway.
No, what they absorb is the adult's anxiety. The neurological takeaway for the child becomes, oh, noticing differences makes adults act weird and nervous.
Which creates a taboo where there didn't need to be one.
Exactly.
By keeping it simple and warm, just saying, yep, they have different hair, isn't that cool? And you're on our special team. You are laying the groundwork that differences aren't a big, scary topic.
You are establishing yourself as a safe person to bring these observations to. You are building an open channel of communication for later.
But that protective bubble of the home environment completely ruptures when they grow a little older.
Oh, it really does.
The guide outlines a massive psychological shift around age 6. And reading between the lines, it's clearly because this is the age they enter the school system.
Yeah, that changes everything. Suddenly, they aren't just categorizing the world from the safety of their living room.
They are in a classroom, navigating a group of 30 other kids, and the social anxiety of fitting in arrives with an absolute vengeance.
6 is the age when a social hierarchy begins to take a definitive shape in a child's mind. They transition from focusing primarily on themselves and their immediate caregivers to becoming hyper-aware of the collective.
They start monitoring what is considered normal by the majority of the group.
Right. And the source material offers a very practical toolkit for this stage. It instructs adults that for a 6-year-old, you need to start explicitly naming various family structures.
The guide lists examples you can use in casual conversation, like living with a mom and dad, living with one parent, living with grandparents, having foster parents, adoptive parents, or 2 moms and 2 dads.
It also leans on a very classic analogy here, the box of crayons.
Oh, I loved that part.
It's simple but effective. If every crayon were the exact same color, the picture wouldn't be very interesting. The crayon metaphor works brilliantly for a 6-year-old's brain because it translates diversity into a concept of collective utility.
Right, they understand that different colors serve different purposes to create a whole image.
Exactly. It gives them a visual way to understand that differences make the collective environment richer. But the text adds a critical instruction for the adult delivering this message.
What's that?
It emphasizes that you must name these various family structures without suggesting, even subtly, that one is more normal or standard than another.
I struggle with that instruction regarding neutral delivery, though.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it human nature to naturally inflect your voice or pause awkwardly when talking about a concept or a family structure that is unfamiliar to you personally?
It is human nature, which is why it's so hard.
So how does an adult actually pull off presenting all of these options neutrally?
Well, it requires immense self-awareness. A 6-year-old is listening to your tone and cadence just as much as your vocabulary.
That makes sense.
The text actually includes a really interesting note here. It resembles a production instruction for an audiobook, actually. It advises the adult to use a warm, calm, and emotionally reassuring parent voice.
Oh, wow. A production instruction.
Yeah, because if you list out different families but your voice gets tight, or your breathing changes, or you rush through certain examples, the child's radar picks up on that hesitation immediately.
You really have to practice presenting all these life experiences with equal warmth and respect. That makes the delivery just as important as the script.
Absolutely.
But there's another part of the 6-year-old section that completely caught me off guard.
The part about negative emotions?
Yes. The guide doesn't just paint a rosy, everything is awesome and everyone belongs picture. There is a specific line suggested for adults to say to 6-year-olds, sometimes feeling different can feel lonely.
That's a powerful line.
I was so struck by that. It feels incredibly profound to validate a child's discomfort instead of instantly trying to cheerlead them out of it.
It really goes against so many modern parenting instincts. We often fall into this trap of toxic positivity. When a child comes home from first grade and says, I feel weird because my family doesn't look like my friends, the immediate panicked instinct is to say, no, 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 your family is amazing. Being different is the best thing ever.
Because we want to fix the negative emotion immediately. We want to say, don't be sad, let's go get ice cream.
We try to erase the discomfort, but doing that completely invalidates their lived reality.
Because by age 6, they already have enough social experience to know that feeling different does sometimes feel isolating.
Right. And if an adult denies that reality, the child learns that they cannot trust that adult with their negative emotions.
Wow, that's heavy.
But by looking at them and saying, sometimes feeling different can feel lonely, and if you ever feel that way, you can always tell me, you are proving that you are safe harbor.
You are showing that you aren't intimidated by their sadness. You are holding space for the complicated feelings.
Exactly.
The text even advises leaving quiet moments after reassuring statements to let the child absorb the message. Like you don't just fill the silence with more cheerleading. You let them feel it.
Which builds an incredible amount of emotional trust between you and the child.
But, visual comparisons and crayon analogies have a shelf life.
They do. They only get you so far.
As a child approaches the end of elementary school, the cognitive landscape shifts again. The guide marks age 9 as a period where kids are developing a highly complex sense of individual identity, a rigid sense of moral fairness, and they are navigating very real, often painful, social dynamics.
They are seeing the world in high definition at this point. It's no longer just about visual differences like skin color or who picks them up from school.
Right.
The text notes that at 9, differences become abstract. They are navigating varying traditions, spoken languages, unseen abilities, neurodivergence, and deep-seated cultural beliefs.
So the script the guide provides for 9-year-olds changes tone to reflect that maturity.
It has to.
It suggests telling them that their inherent value doesn't depend on looking or acting like everyone else, and that true friends will want to know their unique story, rather than asking them to conform.
That's a huge lesson for a 9-year-old.
It really is. But there is a very specific, forceful instruction in the text here that I really want to unpack. The guide actively warns the adult against trying to erase differences.
Yes, this is a crucial part of the text.
It explicitly says, under no circumstances should you tell a 9-year-old that everyone is the exact same on the inside.
Right.
And I know for a fact that this colorblind approach was taught to a whole generation of adults as the polite, progressive way to handle diversity. So why is the text arguing that this is unhelpful or even damaging for a 9-year-old?
Well, we have to look at why that colorblind approach was adopted in the first place and then contrast it with a 9-year-old's cognitive reality.
Okay.
Historically, telling kids we are all the same was intended as a shortcut to teaching equality. The logic was, like, if we pretend we are all identical, we will treat everyone fairly.
Right. I remember that being the standard advice.
But think about a 9-year-old's empirical reality. They look at their classroom, they watch the news, they interact on the playground, and they can see very clearly that everyone is not the same.
Yeah, people have different advantages, different financial struggles, and different cultural backgrounds that dictate how they move through the world.
Exactly. They have enough lived experience to know the shortcut is a myth.
So when a trusted adult looks them in the eye and says, we're all exactly the same, it induces severe cognitive dissonance.
It feels like gaslighting to them. The child thinks, wait, am I seeing things wrong? Because I see differences everywhere. It forces them to doubt their own perception of reality.
It's essentially telling them not to believe their own eyes. That's awful.
It is. Furthermore, the text emphasizes that these differences are real and they constitute a person's story. If you erase the difference in the name of fairness, you erase the story.
You erase the heritage, the unique hurdles that person has overcome, the specific triumphs of that family.
Yes. The goal at age 9 isn't to pretend differences don't exist to make the world feel fair. The goal, as the text lays out, is to teach that people are wonderfully different, they carry totally different histories, while simultaneously deserving the exact same kindness, dignity, and respect.
It is the shift from identicality to equity. Like, you don't have to be a clone of someone to deserve the same respect they get.
Exactly. And for a 9-year-old who might be experiencing the pain of being marginalized or feeling different, telling them everyone is the same minimizes their specific individual pain.
But telling them, as the guide suggests, that people who truly care about them will want to know their unique story. That equips the child with a metric for evaluating their relationships.
It gives them a standard for how they deserve to be treated in the wild.
If a peer asks them to hide a part of their culture or change how they act to fit in, the 9-year-old knows that person isn't a true friend. That is a massive life lesson tucked into a conversation about diversity.
It provides them with an emotional shield.
So we've explored the cognitive stages for the 3-year-old, the 6-year-old, and the 9-year-old. But as we zoom out from the specific scripts, the guide offers an overarching philosophy for the adults tasked with delivering these messages.
And this might be the most important part of the whole text.
I found this part deeply comforting. The text says, you don't have to solve every worry today.
It relieves the adult of the impossible burden of perfection. The guide reminds us that a calm, steady presence answers the child's deeper anxieties long before your vocabulary does.
Which brings us full circle to the very beginning of our deep dive. The real question underneath it all is, am I safe? Do I belong?
Right.
If an adult is frantic, sweating in the grocery store aisle, trying to deliver a flawless TED Talk level speech, they might be reciting all the right words, but their energy is broadcasting, this topic is an emergency.
And the medium becomes the message. If your tone is regulated and emotionally reassuring, you have already answered their core question. You've signaled that the world, with all its differences, is manageable.
The source closes with an analogy that steps away from the crayons and moves into nature. It points out that a garden isn't beautiful because every flower is identical or blooms at the same time.
A garden is an ecosystem.
Right. It is beautiful and healthy because each plant grows in its own way, requiring different conditions, adding something to the environment that no other flower can provide.
It's a gentle reminder that an ecosystem thrives on variety, not conformity. The goal of these conversations isn't to produce a perfectly enlightened child in one afternoon.
No, the goal is simply to make this one loving conversation a safe, sturdy bridge that the child knows they can walk across again and again as they grow.
That's perfectly said.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Whether you are a parent trying to navigate these tricky developmental waters, a teacher looking out over a classroom, or just a person moving through a diverse society, this guide operates as a masterclass in empathy.
It really does.
It reminds us that beneath all our incredibly complex questions about diversity, race, family structures, and uniqueness, there's a fundamental beating heart of a need. The need to know we belong, exactly as we are, without having to change the code.
You don't need a flawless script. You just need to be a safe place.
And I think that's a beautiful place to land.
Well, actually, I think this material leaves us with a really fascinating provocation to consider before we go.
Oh, I love a good provocation. Lay it on us.
We've spent this time analyzing how to explain belonging and differences to 3, 6, and 9-year-olds. We've explored how, when a child points out that they are different, they are secretly asking, do I belong here?
Is the universal question.
But look at the adult world. Look at your workplace, your social circles, your community organizations. When we fixate on how we don't quite fit the mold, when we get anxious about our different educational background, our different lifestyle, or our divergent opinions, aren't we just grown-up kids asking that exact same hidden question?
Wow.
Aren't we all just looking around the room, hoping someone will look back and assure us that the entire ecosystem would be less interesting without our specific contribution?
That is wild to think about. It makes you wonder how many adults are just walking around waiting for someone to tell them they're on the special team.
Next time you find yourself freezing up in the grocery store, maybe keep that in mind.